What's going on, guys? Today I'd like to talk to you about an issue that's been in the news lately. Gerrymandering. A lot of people don't realize that gerrymandering shapes every election, legislative chamber, and every law that gets passed. This practice has been subverting American democracy from the birth of our nation up until today. So what is gerrymandering anyway? At its heart, gerrymandering is the manipulation of voting district boundaries for political gain. Instead of voters choosing their representatives, representatives instead choose their voters. It sounds backwards because it is backwards. When this happens, the promise of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people starts to smell like BS. Why is this manipulation so damaging, you ask? Well, to understand that, we need to recognize what a fair representation is supposed to look like. In a healthy democracy, elected leaders reflect the will of the people. If a community leans one way or another politically, that preference should naturally show in their representatives. But gerrymandering turns this relationship on its head. It allows politicians of any party to carve up districts like puzzle pieces, grouping or dividing communities not by common interests, but by political convenience. The two main tactics politicians use are referred to as packing and cracking. Packing squeezes as many voters of one type into a single district, effectively wasting their influence by giving them overwhelming majorities where they don't need them. As you might have figured, cracking does the exact opposite. It splits groups across several districts so that their votes are diluted and their voices never reach a majority anywhere. Together, these tactics can change the outcome of elections, even when public opinion stays the exact same. And when politicians know their seats are safe due to the protection of a gerrymandered map, they become less accountable to the people. They can afford to ignore voters' needs and often skip any meaningful debate. Often, extremists on both sides win these safe seats. They then push extremist positions without fear of losing support. What a bunch of assholes. Anyway, when Congress is filled with extremists on both sides, they don't work well together, slowing progress to the point where the legislative body becomes paralyzed and rendered ineffective at best. At worst, an extremist Congress will enact policy unrepresentative of the will of the people. In other words, they do a bunch of crazy shit. Anyway, gerrymandering doesn't just distort lines on a map, it distorts behavior and representative governance itself. Now, as we dig a little deeper, we see that gerrymandering tears at the fabric of our communities. Neighborhoods that share schools, roads, and local concerns can be split into multiple districts, each represented by someone who only sees a fraction of their reality. Conversely, wildly different areas, urban streets, rural farmlands, affluent suburbs, can be stitched together with nothing in common except their usefulness to a political map. When districts are drawn without respect for real communities, those communities lose strength and cohesion. Getting anxious yet? Well, as you're probably figuring out firsthand, gerrymandering breeds cynicism. When people believe the game is rigged, they stop playing, and voter turnout drops. Next, faith in government institutions begins to erode. Citizens from all backgrounds begin to feel powerless, and democracy suffers when the public stops believing that their voice has weight. Starting to sound familiar? Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine being a Republican in Illinois or a Democrat in North Carolina or Ohio. These people are the victims of living in states with the most gerrymandered maps in the country. North Carolina has 10 Republican seats to only 4 Democratic seats, despite a 50-50 split in voters. Even today, the Trump regime and their enablers attempt to gerrymander the map further. Rather than fighting gerrymandering as a concept, national leaders in the Democratic Party such as Gavin Newsom are joining in the fun. Soon, California will join the list of states with severely gerrymandered maps. Still, there are several states taking steps to reduce gerrymandering. This is done through independent redistricting commissions, increased transparency, and clear legal standards for fairness. Still, meaningful change requires awareness, vigilance, and participation from all. Gerrymandering thrives in the shadows of quiet back rooms and obscure procedural hearings. It dies in the light. When people understand how it works, when they pay attention to how districts are drawn, and when they insist on fair rules, the system becomes stronger. If we want a healthier, more representative democracy, then we must insist on fair representation. We must reject manipulation disguised as strategy, and we must remind our leaders that power in a democracy flows upward from the people, not downward from district maps created behind closed doors. It's time to build a system where every vote truly counts.